Hi, it's Lisa, and in this video we'll cover keys, and specifically primary keys. So we're going to take a look at primary keys and composite keys, which are another kind of primary key. So the first question I have for you is, here's a table. Which of these fields in the student table is the primary key field? And of course it may be very obvious to you that this field up here in gray it's got a PK next to it, which is the abbreviation for primary key. And indeed, that is the field that will uniquely identify all of these records. So you probably know what a primary key is, but let's just review the definition as defined in the book, Database Design for Mere Mortals. And there's a nice summary of the definition in Appendix C. So most people think of primary keys as something that is a unique identifier. So you've got a bullet here that of course talks about how it has to contain unique values. But in addition, it cannot be a multi-part field. We of course know it must contain unique values. Don't forget it cannot contain null values. Its value should not cause a breach of the organization's security or privacy rules. Its value is not optional in whole or in part. It comprises a minimum number of fields necessary to define uniqueness. So in other words, small is best. Its values must uniquely and exclusively identify each record in the table. Its value must exclusively identify the value of each field within a given record. And its value can be modified only in rare or extreme cases. In other words, don't pick something that you know is going to change over time. In addition, some other tips about primary keys, also in Appendix C. Each table must have one and only one primary key. Each primary key within the database should be unique. No two tables should have the same primary key unless one of them is a subset table, and we'll cover subset tables towards the end of the quarter. All right, well, given that, let's consider some primary keys, and I've already spelled it out for you. There's a bad list on the left and the good list on the right. So think about each of these and why they would not work as a primary key. So last name is an example, right? So classic example of why last name doesn't work. Think about me. I'm Lisa Harris, and in the United States there are quite a few Lisa Harrises. And the funniest story I have is I used to own a 1985 Toyota Tercel, and this car was blue. And I went to a mechanic called Clinton's in the U District, and one time there was an issue with my records, and we got to the bottom of it, and we found out that there was another Lisa Harris also with a 1985 Toyota Tercel, and it was blue. Exactly the same kind of car. So I joked to him, I said, well, hey, how do you tell us apart? And he said, oh, I use your phone number. And so I said to him, well, hey, we're going to become roommates and share the same phone number, and then you'll be stuck. Well, I don't think he probably used phone number, and he certainly couldn't use last name, right? Both of those are bad choices. You're going to likely have repeats, right? Phone numbers are recycled, etc. He could have used VIN number, that's a possibility, although he doesn't control the VIN number. The VIN number is issued by a different agency. And so VIN isn't the best idea either. He probably had some sort of customer number, and in a pinch, that's really what he would have to use. Okay, so why are all these bad? Well, last name, we know it's going to repeat. It also could change, right? If I get, when someone gets married, they often want to change their last name. Phone numbers, we know those are recycled, so over time we can't ensure uniqueness. Jumping down to VIN number, people from the police department will tell you that you can't always get a VIN number, but also a VIN number is issued by a different agency. It's never great to use a primary key that you don't control. That's the same thing with Social Security number. You do not control Social Security number. If we're at Bellevue College, we don't use Social Security number, and one reason would be we don't control it. Other reasons, though, is that it's a policy now. We cannot use Social Security number as a unique identifier for privacy reasons. But further, we have plenty of international students, and they don't have Social Security numbers. So not a great choice. So what are good choices? Over here, SID, we're familiar with that at Bellevue College. That's the System Identification Number. That's something that we generate and thus we control. So, good idea. It's small or, numeric, relatively, a really good idea. So other ideas are, again, basically things that you create, like employee ID, registration number. You control them, you generate them, you can make sure they're small, numeric, and they do not change, and they do not duplicate. All right, moving on to the next slide. So another type of primary key would be a composite primary key. So my question here is, which table is using a composite primary key? And in looking around, you might identify this middle table, also known as a junction table, and you might see that little acronym there, CPK, which is composite primary key. So what is a composite primary key? A composite primary key is a multi-field primary key, and some tables will require a multi-field primary key. Not these tables. The student table lists each student one time, so student ID is all you need. And over here in the classes table, it lists each class one time, so class ID is all you need. But in these junction tables, it shows the interaction between students and classes, and you're going to have student ID repeat and class ID repeat. Let me show you what I mean. Here's some sample data, and if we look at the sample data, we can see that student number one is repeating a couple of times, right? We also see that the class ID repeats a number of times. So you generally can't use a single field primary key in these types of tables to ensure uniqueness. So what do? You combine them together. Now, the book sometimes simplifies their early examples, and they just use student ID and class ID. Well, we don't know what the business rules are, but it's reasonable to assume that a student could take the same class twice. Maybe they want to get a better grade, right? So in that case, what you might do is add a date. So I have a combination of student ID, class ID, and completion to date. So the three-field combination there will give me the unique combination of numbers that I need to ensure uniqueness. All right, so one quick quiz question. Make sure you're clear on this. True or false, a primary key can be a multi-field composite key. Okay, true or false, a primary key can be a multi-field composite key. And the answer, of course, is true. That's what we were looking at. So primary keys might be single fields for certain types of tables, and in those middle junction type tables, you're going to have often a multi-field primary key. All right, that's all for now.